How I make $4.200 month selling goat cheese from my backyard. No one even knows it's a business. But here's what nobody talks about when they show you their goat cheese operation. The real money isn't in the cheese itself. The real money is in something so simple, so overlooked, that most people with goats completely miss it. And by the time they figure it out, they've already wasted their first 2 years of profit. Stay with me, because at the end of this video, I'm going to reveal exactly what that hidden income stream is and how you can start capturing it immediately, even if you've never made cheese in your life. If you're watching this, you probably already know that side hustles from your own property are absolutely real. But what you might not know is how to position yourself to make the real money that comes after the initial product. Before we jump into how this all works, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment down below. Tell me, what's the one thing on your property right now that you think could make you money? I'm genuinely curious, and I read every single comment. Now, wait, this part is absolutely critical. The way most people approach backyard agriculture, they're thinking about it completely wrong. They think about the customer as their primary revenue source. But that's amateur hour. And before we go any deeper into the actual mechanics of how this works, I need to tell you something important. I've put together a comprehensive guide on the 7 hidden revenue streams that operate around your primary product, the ones that turn a hobby into a genuine 4-figure monthly business. That guide breaks down exactly which of these income sources applies to goats, which applies to crops, and which applies to animals you haven't even considered yet. It's available in the description and pinned in the comments, and it's where I map out the entire system that turns a single backyard into multiple automated income channels. This isn't free content. It's the exact framework I've used to scale beyond what most people think is possible on a quarter acre. The reason I'm saying this up front is because you need to understand something about the goat cheese world that catches almost everyone off guard. When you start selling goat cheese, you're entering a market that already has competitors, other producers, grocery stores, bigger operations with better branding. The margins on the actual cheese? They're smaller than you think. But here's the thing, almost nobody realizes. Goats aren't just cheese machines. They're gateway products to a completely different revenue ecosystem. Let me back up and tell you what my actual goat cheese sales looked like in month 1. I had 3 goats. Yes, just 3. Modest setup. I was making maybe 8 pounds of cheese per week, selling it at the farmer's market for about $16 per pound. That sounds good on paper. 8 pounds times $16 equals $128 per week. 4 weeks in a month? That's $512. Not bad for a side hustle. But here's the problem. It took me maybe 3 hours per week of actual production time, but it took me 10 to 12 hours just to sell it, deliver it, manage the customer conversations, and deal with the unpredictable farmer's market logistics. So I was making about $30 per hour of actual labor if you do the math. That's barely above minimum wage, and yet the business was growing. But the cheese sales themselves weren't the growth engine. Something else was. Every week at the farmer's market, I wasn't just selling cheese. I was collecting information, names, emails, phone numbers, dietary preferences, how much they spent, how often they came back. I was building a database of customers, and more importantly, I was building trust. People don't just buy a product once, especially with something like goat cheese, which is a premium, trust-based purchase. They want to know the person behind it. They want a story, and when you show up every single week in the same spot with the same product, with genuine enthusiasm, people notice. They remember you. By month 4, I wasn't selling more cheese. My production was still limited by my 3 goats, but my mailing list had grown to 217 people, and that's when everything changed. See, one of my regular customers, a woman named Rebecca who came every single week, she approached me with a question. She said, "How much would you charge to teach a workshop? I've got a group of friends who are obsessed with what you do, and we want to learn." And I remember standing there, frozen, because nobody had ever asked me that before. I didn't even think of my goat operation as something teachable. It was just what I did on weekends. But it was the first signal, the first hint that the actual value I was creating wasn't the cheese. It was the knowledge, the transparency, the access to someone who had figured something out that other people wanted to know. I charged her group $75 per person for a 3-hour workshop. 12 people showed up. That's $900 for one afternoon. And that's when I realized the goats weren't the business. The goats were the credibility. The goats were the hook that made people trust me enough to pay for something much more valuable. My time, my knowledge, my system. But that's not where the real $4,200 per month came from either. That's the middleman income. And this is crucial, because this is where most people get stuck. They trade their time for money. Workshops, consultations, tours. Which is better than just selling cheese, sure. But you're still trading time for money. You're still limited by how many hours are in a week. And once you hit that ceiling, you're done. You can't scale anymore. The real secret, and this is the payoff that comes later, so hold on to this thought, is understanding which income streams actually scale, and which ones are just time traps that look like businesses. So let me break down what happened next. After those first workshops and farmers market sales, I realized something. The goat cheese itself was only the foundation. It was the permission slip to do everything else. The cheese got people interested. The cheese got them to visit. But the real income was coming from what I built around it. I started selling cheese online through a simple Shopify store. Nothing fancy, just photos, descriptions, and a checkout. The setup cost me about $300. The shipping supplies another $200. But here's the thing. Every single order that went out didn't require me to be there. No time spent. The margins on shipped cheese are higher because people will pay for convenience and the story. That brought in about $1,000 a month on its own, once it got rolling. And it took 3 months to get rolling. 3 months of zero online sales before the first order came through. But then, once the momentum started, it compounded. Repeat customers, word of mouth, people sharing photos of their orders on Instagram, tagging my account. The second income stream I added was a subscription box model. Not everyone wants to buy once. Some people want cheese delivered monthly. I offered 3 tiers. The basic box at $49, the deluxe box at $89, and the premium tasting experience at $129. Each box came with a different selection, a story card about that month's batch, and a suggested pairing guide. I sent out maybe 30 boxes in the first month. By month 6, I had 120 recurring monthly subscribers. That's about $6,000 a month in recurring revenue. Subscribers don't need marketing every single month. They're on autopilot. They just keep paying. And that's where the real passive income kicked in. But here's where most people stop, and this is important. They think that's the end of the story. They hit a few $1,000s a month, and they're satisfied. They stick with what's working, and then they plateau. Before we continue deeper into how this scaled further, and trust me, this is where it gets really interesting, I want to point something out. Most people fail at building income streams like this, not because the idea is bad, but because they don't understand the mechanics underneath. They don't know why some cheese businesses make $4,000 a month and others make $400. That's exactly what my complete guide covers. The actual decision-making framework, the pricing psychology, the channel strategies, the exact sequence of when to add income streams and when to hold. You can find that guide in the description and pinned comment. It's the detailed breakdown that takes you from zero to sustainable income. And we'll touch on parts of it here, but to really understand how this became a full system, you need to see the complete picture. So what happened next was I got invited to sell at a regional food and beverage expo, 3 days, 20 booths nearby. Normally, something like that would just be farmers market revenue, maybe $2,000 over 3 days if I'm lucky. But I treated it differently. I didn't go there just to sell cheese. I went there to build a list. I set up a simple sign-up sheet, just an iPad with a Google form. Sign up for exclusive early access to our online store and get 15% off your first order. Over those 3 days, I collected 340 email addresses, 340 people who had literally tasted the product and wanted more. I followed up with an email sequence over the next 2 weeks, not pushy, just 3 emails, a welcome email, a product education email explaining the story behind the farm, and a special offer email for the subscription boxes. 47% of those people converted to either a one-time online order or a subscription. That's 159 customers from a single event. Now, here's where it gets interesting. That expo also connected me with a local restaurant. The head chef tried the cheese, asked if I could do a custom batch for their cheese board. 100 pounds per month, $50 per pound. That's $5,000 in bulk sales, recurring, right there. But I didn't stop there. That restaurant mentioned the farm to another restaurant, then another. Within 6 months, I had 4 restaurants as bulk clients. That's $20,000 a month in pure wholesale revenue. No marketing spend, no time on my part selling. The orders just came in because the product was good and word spread. So let me map out where the money was actually coming from at this point. 1. Direct retail at farmers markets, about $1,000 per month. 2. Online store and shipping, approximately $1,000 per month. 3. Subscription box service, $6,000 monthly with 120 subscribers. 4. Restaurant bulk sales, $20,000 monthly across 4 accounts. 5. Workshops and farm tours, still bringing in $200 per workshop, and I was doing maybe 3 to 4 per month. That totals out to just under $29,000 a month, far more than the $4,200 I mentioned at the start. So why did I say $4,000? Because $29,000 is the gross. The mess in the middle is where reality lives, and most people making backyard income forget to talk about that part. The cold storage uses about $800 of electricity per month. The milk itself, because I have the goats, but I also supplement with purchased milk to meet demand, costs me around $3,500 monthly. Packaging, labels, and shipping supplies run another $1,200. I had to hire someone to help with production during the busy season. Repairs, maintenance on equipment, unexpected costs, another $500. That's $6,000 in monthly expenses. So the real net income is around $23,000. Still significant, still way more than a part-time job. But it's not the raw $29,000 people think about when they see a farming business. That difference, that gap between gross and net, is where most backyard businesses fail. They don't account for it. They spend money on things they don't need. They scale too fast without adjusting expenses. And this is actually where a lot of people get confused about scaling a backyard income business. They see the big number and they think, I'll just do more. But doing more costs more. More cheese means more milk, more labor, more storage space. There's a point where the return on investment flips. You go from profitable to just trading more hours for money again. So the question becomes, where is your sweet spot? For me, it took about 18 months to find it. And the answer wasn't, sell as much cheese as possible. The answer was, sell enough cheese through enough different channels that income becomes stable without having to work 80 hours a week. And that's the secret I promised you at the beginning of this video. It's not about building the biggest operation. It's not about being the loudest voice at the farmer's market or the one with the slickest Instagram feed. The real edge, the thing that separates people who make goat cheese a side hustle from people who make it a sustainable income, is knowing exactly where your efficiency line sits, and then staying there. Most people never find that line. They either give up too early because they think this won't scale to $1 million, or they push too hard and burn out because they're chasing volume instead of value. But if you're reading this as someone who has a backyard, a few goats, and the desire to build real monthly income without it becoming a full-time job, you're actually in the perfect position to find that sweet spot faster than I did. Because you're not competing on scale. You're competing on story, on quality, and on direct relationships. You're competing on the fact that someone can drive to your house on a Saturday morning, meet you face-to-face, taste cheese that was made in your shed 3 days ago, and know exactly where their money is going. That's worth a premium. That's worth loyalty. That's worth repeat business. Now, before we wrap up, let me be direct about what I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you this is passive income. It's not. You will work. You will work hard on certain days. Cheese making is a skill, and skills take practice. But what I am telling you is this. The work is front-loaded. Once you dial in your process, once you know your recipe, once you understand your customers, the hours required each week actually start to flatten out. You're not working harder. You're just working smarter. The other thing I want to address, you don't need a huge herd to make real money. I know I mentioned my operation, but understand that I built it that way because that was my goal. You could make $3 to $4 a month with just 4 to 6 good dairy goats. That's genuinely enough for a meaningful side income. That's enough to pay a mortgage payment, or cover a car payment, or fund a college savings plan for your kids. And you can manage that while working another job or running another business. It's not either or, it's and. So here's what I want you to actually do this week. Don't start a goat cheese business tomorrow. That's not the challenge. Instead, figure out what your sweet spot would look like if you built it. Sit down with a pen and paper, or open a spreadsheet if that's more your style, and do the math. How many goats could you realistically milk and care for in the time you have available each week? What would the milk yield be? How much cheese would that become? What's the realistic monthly revenue at your local farmers market prices? And most importantly, does that number make sense for your life right now? Because that's where this whole conversation started. Most people look at goat cheese and they see a product. I want you to see something different. I want you to see a business model that's designed to fit into your actual life, not one that demands you remake your entire life to serve it. The backyard that no one knows is a business isn't a business because it's hidden. It's a business because it's intentional, it's profitable, and it's sustainable without destroying you. That's the entire picture, not the fantasy version where you're running a commercial dairy and selling to restaurants across 3 states, but the real version, where your backyard generates real income, your family benefits from it, your neighbors have no idea it's a business, and you still have time to actually live your life. So thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this perspective has resonated with you, if you're starting to see your backyard differently, I'd genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. What would your sweet spot look like? What animal, crop, or craft would you choose if you knew it could generate real income without consuming your life? Don't just watch, engage with that question. Your answer might spark an idea that changes someone else's life who reads it. And if you want the complete breakdown, the full financial models, the step-by-step setup guides, the pricing strategies, the regulatory checklist, the customer acquisition playbook, I've put all of that into a detailed guide that's available in the description and pinned in the comments. It's the resource I wish I'd had when I started. And before you go, make sure you're subscribed and that the notification bell is turned on so you never miss a new upload. There are so many ways to turn your land into income, and I'm publishing new strategies every single week. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you in the next one.